beginning of Boogie Nights, that famous scene when they do the camera work into the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same club.
Okay.
And it was a small venue, and Michael wound up calling him back, and it turned out that they went out to lunch, and it turned out to be his son. And that was like, wow, that changed everything. Now, here's the kicker. When
you had nothing, you weren't doing ring announcing or acting or
I own
voiceover work?
telemarketing companies. I own a variety of businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I had my first corporation when I was 19.
Okay.
I've had security and alarm companies, import-export company, multiple telemarketing companies I've been involved and owned, all that stuff until finally, after meeting my brother, I owned 2 companies at the time, one a telemarketing company, and I was also putting on antique collector gun and artifact shows in Vegas and LA, just branching out in all the things that I like. I'm very big on passion and trying to monetize my passions. But I was burnt out on the telemarketing industry, and I was a bigwig. I was the wolf of LA. I didn't cheat people back then. I sold office supplies, maybe sold them some higher prices than others, but it wasn't illegal. But it was like, that was the thing back then. But I was burned out. I was making a lot of money, had a beach house. I mean, it was ridiculous, but I didn't like going to work anymore. Yeah. I trained thousands of salespeople, the whole bit. I went through all the experience. So then I go to travel with Michael and watch the boxing, which I'm a huge fan of. My grandfather's Johnny Buff. He's in the history books as the bantamweight flyweight champion of the world in boxing in 1921. Michael did not know that. So at any rate, my love for boxing and going, and then I was at an event in 1992. Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield fought each other for the very first time. And I watched Michael go do his rumble and everybody go crazy. Hulk Hogan, Jack Nicholson jumping out of their seats. And I thought, wow, something's here. And he's not doing anything about it. He didn't even make a T-shirt. I pushed him to trademark the phrase, which he did, but it wasn't trademarked fully to protect it. He needed more protection and needed more guidance. So I met with him a few days later, and I basically, in a nutshell, said, look, I want to make you richer and more famous than you ever dreamed. I want to make myself in the process, and I want to be your manager for the proper commission, and I want to be your partner because I'm going to have visions of making licensing deals like video games and toys and put you on the basketball and football courts.
So he was just going out and announcing and not thinking of himself as a brand at all?
No. Well, Michael self-professedly is not the greatest businessman, and that's where I come in. And the combination of the two of us, with him doing his 50% and my doing my 50%, made for a perfect partnership. And he said, well, how are you going to do all this? And I said, well, I don't know. But if I'm going to give all this up, you better believe. Try not to curse.
Yeah,
better believe.
You can. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Yeah.
I'm not really a cursor. When I say it, I mean it. But better believe that I'm going to get it done. And I just started off figuring it all out. Got to an attorney, studied trademark law. One of the emphasis on my decision was Pat Riley when he three-peated with the Chicago Bulls. He trademarked three-peat. And it was a big story back then how he made like $1.5 million off selling T-shirts or whatever he did, gross money in his pocket, whatever. I just heard $1.5 million. So I thought, wow, trademark this and we can start doing the same thing. I just got to figure out how to do it. And that was my big emphasis back then. And I got with an attorney, properly trademarked it. And to date,
sorry, go ahead.
To date since then, we've sold over $400 million in ventures, licenses, all that. Now that's not in our pocket. That's gross sales.
Sure.
But it is the most popular trademark, if not the most profitable one, aside from the Nike Swish and stuff like that, spoken by a live individual. And it still to this day is, with its time, my trademark coming up, very strongly too. I also wanted to announce back then. I told him I wanted to be an announcer, and we agreed I wouldn't do boxing. And I said, that's okay, something will come along. Because I'd done motivational speeches. I wanted to be an actor as a kid, and I love being, I'm not the guy in the classroom who wants to sit in the rear row and listen to the teacher. I want to be the teacher. So I want to be the guy on the stage doing the talking.
God, we're a lot alike, Bruce. We're a lot alike. I aspire to reach those levels of success with what you're doing because I've kind of always been the same way, pushing myself in those directions, being an entrepreneur. I started a company in my early 20s. I was running promotions companies for a band, and I was the lead singer of one of the bands, and kind of along the same thing. But everything I did failed, and that's fine. It's okay.
But you don't know what it's like to succeed unless you know how to fail.
Exactly. So, you started this kind of later in life then. So if you didn't even know he existed until you were 28, what are you, mid-30s when you actually connect with him and start your partnership?
We started roughly 4 years later. I was basically about 33, and I started announcing the UFC when I was 37, and coincidentally, He started announcing in boxing when he was around 37. The similarities are very strong.
That's cool. Yeah. That is so cool. So how did you link up with the UFC? So you were managing your brother, and I think it's fascinating, by the way, that with all the success you've had, you still manage your brother to this day. Yeah. Like you are his manager, but yet you are your own performer in your own right. That's fascinating. And I would have assumed that you started off as his manager, and then now you both have similar managers or whatever, but you still manage your brother's deals.
I manage both of us. Nobody manages us except for me. I manage the whole
fascinating.
thing. I am the governor of my own destiny. I am my own God in that respect. I have to make the final decision. That's one thing I preach a lot. But with all respect to religion, I'm not getting religious there. It's just a term. Yeah. But you have to be in control of what you're doing in life. If you put your hands in control of others, I found when I do that, more times than not, the wrong decisions are made. Now, that could be partially me being a micromanager to the point that I am. But it works for me, and in this day and age of computers and email and everything, versus when I started out with him and sending out 300 hand faxes a night to tell people what's going on, you simply press buttons now. And I've run businesses with 30,000 plus square foot offices, 100 plus employees. I can run things like that right out of my home office because modern technology allows you to do that, as long as you can delegate properly and get it done.
So what do you... I'm assuming, did you go to college? You went to school for none of this?
I graduated high school. I went to college, and I saw a job card on a job board there. It said earn $250 to $450 a week, selling part-time over the telephone, and I started going to school. I was working from 6 in the morning to 1, telemarketing, became the sales manager within 3 months, and started my first company at 19 after realizing how they did it because I thought I could do it. Got sued for $1 million. That failed, went back to work for them. Didn't lose any money. They paid all the legal fees, and I wound up making more money and becoming a part owner in their company. And that was my start in the telemarketing industry.
That was your education too, right? Yeah.
So when I was going to school from basically 3 to 10 o'clock at night, studying what it takes to do business that I was doing during the day, I figured, I'm making more money than most people make when they're in their late 30s. Now I've established this thing for myself. I was making $100,000 a year at like 20 years old in 1977. Right?
Wow.
So transport that into what that kind of income is today.
Yeah.
I don't know where all the money went, but I had a lot of fun with it.
But that's where it went, yeah.
But I decided to roll the dice, and I said, look, I'm going to stop college. Not that I don't believe college is good. College is great. College teaches you knowledge. It does not teach you application. No matter how many lab events you go through in college, okay, or how many studies. You have to get out there, and you got to crack that nut yourself, right? So I decided to get out, get in the streets, learn by being in the streets, doing what needs to be done. And I told myself, if I can put this together and I don't make it happen in 2 years, I'll go back to college. I never went back. It worked for me. Now, granted, you want to be an accountant, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you have to go to college. I don't believe you do have to go to college these days. I think if you have smarts and you find something you're passionate about, and can monetize it, whether it's sales, which people make the most money in sales or whatever, it's all about what you want to do. But I would never tell you not to go to college. I'm just telling you,
it can't hurt.
Have to.
Right. It can't hurt. But for those people who think, and a lot of young people put themselves under a lot of pressure. They'll think at 18 years old, graduating high school, they have to pick what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And none of us knew what the hell we were doing at 18.
Because it's instilled in us. We're instilled to get a job, and maybe it's changing now a little bit, but we're instilled with this whole social media influence, which is a positive and a negative industry at the same time for many people. But we're instilled to work for 20 years, retire with a gold watch, and hopefully a retirement. Right?
That's awful.
It's not that it's awful. It's actually very great, but it depends on where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's awful. My biggest fear in life has always been mediocrity.
Yeah,
that terrifies me.
But see, this is where you fit in the 2% of what I call the populace, because everybody dreams about what they want to do in life, but 98% continue to dream and 2% put into action. Those 2% make the top of the pyramid, which are the leaders and the most successful people in their fields. But the bottom base is just as important, because if it's not solid and firm, the top's going to fall down. It's just going to crash. Yeah. So everybody has their role in life. There are leaders and there's followers. It is not bad to be a follower, as long as you hopefully are happy in what you do. We need followers. We need people to do and be delegated to and do work.
Yeah, my dad was like that. My dad had opportunity. He was in maintenance and like warehouse type work for 35, 40 years. And I would ask him, I'm like, Dad, you got so much experience there's this job paying 60, 70,000 a year as a manager. Do you want to, he's like, I don't want to mess with people's schedules. I don't want to have to fire people. I don't want to have to write people up. I just want to make coffee and go home and buy a 6-pack of beer on the way home. And that made him happy. And he had a little garden in the backyard, and he was born, he moved into his house he lived in when he was like 2 or 3 years old, grew up there, ended up owning that house, and that's where he died. And he was a happy guy. I mean, it was a very simple life.
I give your father all the credit in the world. I think that to me spells success. At the end of my podcast, I always say, treat everybody around you with respect, treat people the way you want to be treated, be a role model to your sphere of influence. And when you set your goals and go on that path, just be the best you can be. Do the best job you can, because then you're winning. It doesn't mean that you're the best in the game or whatever. If you just be the best you can be and you're happy with yourself, then you're winning at life. Whatever it takes you to, it takes you to. It's up to you as an individual. And I support everybody in their walks on that path.
I love that. And for those wondering what the tie-in here is, like, okay, when you're going to debate Bruce about the existence of Jesus, that's not the point of this show. I think that the tie-in for me is how inspirational you are and your life has been, because so many times a lot of the religious people will say things like, let go and let God, or if it's in God's hands, it'll happen. And I feel like a lot of them give up in that respect. And I want them, you were mentioning being in control of your own destiny. That's it. And that to me is the tie-in. Is this is an inspirational episode for me to tell people that, and a lot of people too, that don't know what they're doing at 27 years old and think it's too late for me to get started. So many people start what they end up doing in their 60s and 70s in their 30s, 40s, or maybe even 50s. And you're a great example of that, starting at 37. I moved to LA and started acting and real comedy at 36. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was behind at the same time. And I had guys like Jay Moore pull me aside in the green room, and I'm like, man, I feel like I started too late. And they'd go, listen, you actually have a little bit of an advantage right now because you're new in comedy, but you're not going to make the same dumb mistakes that we made at 18 when we were trying to navigate this business space. So you have a good business head on your shoulders. Bringing that into comedy, you're going to go faster than we did at 18, 19, and 20. So there are some advantages and some inspirations to starting later in life and to picking yourself up by your own sort of bootstraps and controlling your own destiny. I don't mind that people are religious. What bugs me is when they put that if something didn't happen, it's because God didn't want it to happen. I'm like, no, try it again. Do something else. Put that same passion that you were talking about, Bruce. Well, I want people to follow their passions.
To comment on what you're saying, because I'm with you all the way what you're saying, and I don't mean to insult any of your listeners who are very religious and they're not very religious, who are religious in their own way, because let me just explain before I say what I'm about to say. When I say God bless you, which I say a lot, I mean whoever your God is, I hope they bless you. Okay, because people are Buddhist, people are Catholic, people are Jewish, people are, from other areas of the world, Protestant, whatever. And let's face it, religion has caused more bloodshed in history than anything else in history.
Sure.
Now, the reason for that is because people are not agreeing on their beliefs, and it causes conflict in many different ways, shapes, and forms. This is something I like to avoid. So I don't want to get into a conversation. I prefer not to get into a conversation with people about why their religion is better, stronger, why I should believe this, why I should believe that. Bottom line is, you chose what you chose. I chose what I chose. I'm showing you respect by saying God bless you. And if your God gives you the strength to make your decisions and to get through the trials and tribulations of life, the more power to you. For me, if I put my life in the hands of others, including a God, then I am not relying on my own power that I've spent 62 years learning how to live in this life through my experiences and trials and tribulations, positive and negative to the max in each direction I've gone through to become the man I am today to make these decisions. Now, for me, that's where I gain my power. And I get support from my friends, and I get support spiritually while I'll go out and meditate and just try to calm myself to make sure I'm going to make the right decision. Because when a decision is made, and if I make the wrong decision, is God going to come in and pay the bills that are going to cost me on that decision I just made wrong? Yeah. Is nobody? No, I have to answer for it.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to deal with it, whether it's legal or not. I have to deal with the issue. So I look to myself for that power.
So that's important for people to do. The one thing I slightly push back on is it does matter to me, and this is probably my biggest obstacle anytime I talk with anyone, even other people who are non-believers like myself, who don't have a specific religion they ascribe to. They always just go, why do you care? Like, what does it matter? If it gets them through their day and it empowers them, why not just leave them alone? And I did Daryl Hammond's podcast,